transcription and recording.
Call it the order.
Of the building board.
Let's call the building board. So the Board of Building Regulation Examiners and Appeals to order. Today, January 19th, 2023. Call it 5:34.
Mr. Straight,
Present.
Mr. Cowling,
Present.
Mr. Arnold. Present. Mr. McCann,
Present.
Mr. Kowalewski,
Present.
Mr. Vinoy,
Present.
Mr. Fulmer,
Present.
Mr. Hamel.
Present.
Mr. Dial.
Here.
And at the moment, I do not see Mr. Spinelli, so we'll hold on. He did say he would be calling in, but we will see.
And
So you would have a quorum.
Mr. Perdine.
And for staff, Mr. Knopfinger,
Present.
Mr. Campbell,
Present.
Mr. Dopa,
Present.
and Mr. Fosberg.
Present.
On staff.
Thank you. Moving on to full of the agenda.
Make a motion for the agenda. Second. You have to speak up so that.
Sorry, I'm still. That's what I was looking for. I don't see the,
So the items in your agenda are from a previous meeting. We didn't really have any more current paperwork,
Okay.
but we will be speaking to it,
to the,
to the items on the agenda.
with regards to items on the agenda, there is still the AO 2022 dash, I believe, 100.
Yes.
I don't see that on.
It got missed, but it should be 5B.
Okay, I would make a motion to have that to 5B. I'll make a motion. Secret ordinance 2022 dash 100. Everybody in favor of that motion?
Speak up.
Is everybody in favor of that motion? I think that question asked. Is anybody opposed?
Yeah.
I think we'll call that. So with that adjustment to the agenda. The original motion for approval. All right, can we? Does someone need to?
No, I'll do the
Same. So we'll just. Any objections to the agenda as amended? Hearing none, we'll say that's approved. Moving on to approval of the minutes from our last meeting.
Make motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Second.
Does anybody oppose the approval of the minutes?
Oh, I didn't put that up.
I don't, I don't think they're, I don't like, yeah. I don't- Is anybody opposed to the minutes? Hearing none, we'll approve the minutes. So we'll move on to the next business item, or next item, which is our new business. First of which is elections. So. Elections
For chair and
for
vice
chair, vice chair. And I'll just open the floor to any nominations for chair. Let's step aside.
You will have to give to the vice chair. Just Mr. Bennett.
So with that in mind, I'll hand the gavel over to Mr. Benoit for nominations for chair. It's your meeting.
You want me to nominate someone for chair? I'd nominate Jason Dial. I think he'd be a great president.
No, what you have to do is open up the floor to nominations because now you're acting as chair.
Okay, I understand. So do I have to make a motion or do I just open the floor?
Open the floor.
All right, so I'll open the floor to nominations. Anyone?
Chair and vice chair.
Forgive me for being a newcomer here, but typically on a body, have your body and then kind of like an executive is what in the past, who was the chair and vice chair?
Right now it is Mr. Sobolewski and Mr. Benoit as chair and vice chair. And in the past, Mr. Boney has been chair for a rather long time. And he had Mr. Frudine as his vice chair.
And I think, and before me, if chair was
Sterling.
Straight, and I was the vice chair for one of his 2 terms as chair. Prior to that, it was Mr. Straight was chair, and I forget who was vice chair.
So has it been historically that the vice chair became the chair after this yearly thing? or-
Not always.
Not necessarily.
Just that being the chair, yeah, not available. Hey, Daniel, you're up.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir. Oh, sorry. I
I
guess
will,
that's it right now.
No, that's Mr. Straight.
this is Mr. Straight, and I'll go ahead and nominate Mr. Benoit for chair.
Do the nominations need a second, or is it just put their name in the hat?
It's just the name in the hat, and if anybody else makes someone will have to second that nomination.
Okay, I second it. It's Eric.
So it needs vice chair still?
No, not
Nomination?
yet. Not yet. We're just working on the chair. So,
I believe we'll give Mr. Benoit a chance to accept or decline the nomination. It's your choice. We're not going to force you.
yes.
I'm fine with doing it for a round. I still don't really feel like I have a great grasp of what the position would entail, but I'll definitely give it my all.
Okay.
Mr. Benoit, you can also request to see if there are any other nominations.
Anybody else have a nomination for chair?
Hearing none, seeing none.
we need to now, to vote. Yeah, you still have to anonymously vote him in. You do have to agree to vote him in.
Does it have to be, you know?
It doesn't have to. So if everyone who is in agreement of the motion that Mr. Vinoy become chair, please say aye.
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 Thank you.
Aye.
Now, Mr.
Man,
Vinoy,
that was quick and easy.
you can open it up for vice chair.
Okay, can we open the floor up for vice chair?
Yes,
Any nominations? Jason Dial.
who was that?
Mr. Chair, I'll go ahead and nominate Jason Dial.
Okay, do we have any other nominations?
I'll second the nomination for Dial.
At the moment,
So,
yes.
current.
I mean, I guess, same kind of comment Dan had. I mean, this is kind of jumping into the deep end here, but I'm up for the challenge, so I'll accept your nomination, Daniel.
Through the chair, I would nominate Mr. Hamels.
Second that. I'll accept.
Sorry, everybody, I'm trying to get the kid to hockey practice and figure out what's going on. I missed what we just said.
All right, Mr. Soboleski nominated Mr. Hamels as vice chair as well. And then Jason Arnold seconded.
Okay, so we got two. Do we have anybody else?
Okay, close nominations. Nominations are closed.
Okay,
Now you get to vote. You can
all
go,
right. All right, so we need to vote for all those in favor of Jason Dial.
say aye.
Aye.
Who was that?
Don McCann.
And Dan Vinoy. Okay, all those in favor of Mr. Hamels?
All in favor of Mr. Hamels?
Aye.
Like Mr. Hamels has it.
Well, I need one more because it's a tie.
The tie. We're at 2. 2 and 2.
So,
No, three.
so I need to know who,
Mr. Hamel, I voted.
yes, and Jake, so that's 2. And what did Mr.
I
Keith,
voted for Mr.
there's 3. Anybody else? Eric?
Oh, I see. My mute was on. I voted for Hamels.
Thank you.
All right. All right, Hamels, vice chair.
It's vice chair.
Perfect. Okay, where do we move from here?
Now you go on to the 3-member panel, which is item 4B.
Okay. Hold on, I don't even have my agenda here. A second, let me grab it.
Mr. Bournoy is not present. As he just did his vehicle and Mr.
Member
Hammond.
panel.
And,
Yes, he could. If Mr.
if that's okay.
If Mr. Noy's okay with that.
If Mr. Benoit is all right with that. Mr. Benoit, are you okay with your vice chair going through the agenda since you are not physically here?
Yeah, if Hamels is there and doesn't mind, that'd be a little easier having some miscommunication about where we're supposed to be right now. So that's kind of trying to figure out what's going on. But yeah, if you would, that would be great.
Want to move on to new business item, B, 3-member panel.
Yes,
Do I need to, or to discuss that?
you can. We do have 4 groups. The first one is electrical, the second one is plumbing mechanical, the third one is civil structural, and the last one is architectural. And the one you have or was sent out is the one from 2022. So Mr. Boney is no longer with us. Mr. Loken has not attended for some time. So does anyone, I have Mr. Cowling, Mr. Fredine, Mr. Sobolewski, Mr. Klunder, Mr. Benoit, and Mr. Straight on electrical. Are there any changes?
Through the chair, I would request that being removed from the electrical, panel. Not in my wheelhouse.
Is everyone good with electrical?
I am, yeah.
All right. Moving on, for mechanical plumbing, I have Mr. Fredine, Mr. Sobolewski, Mr. McCann, and we would need an alternate. If there, anyone so wishes.
Is there anyone who would like to step up as an alternate for that one?
Are we assuming that Tyler is done?
I have not heard whether he has been reappointed or not. Or if he even put in his paperwork. We don't have to have an alternate. It's just that at the time when we had a more fuller board, we chose alternates. So we can go ahead and just have those 3.
We also
Which group is this for? Did you say mechanical?
Yes,
And
I-
plumbing.
I'm an amateur mechanical engineer, so you can put me down as an alternate.
Yeah, there we go, electrical engineer.
okay. Moving on to civil structural. Right now, since Mr. Loken has not attended, I have Mr. Straight. We could add maybe Mr. Spinelli,
I would definitely,
Palmer, okay.
Yes, I accept.
would definitely recommend others now.
It's good, otherwise it's a very lonely committee.
Is everyone good with that? Okay, Mr. Dial, Mr. Straight, Mr. Spinelli, and Mr. Palmer.
Oh, I got put on that one.
You don't have to be.
Oh, no, I had recommended Andre.
Oh, okay, then we can take you off, that's no problem. That is 3.
Give me an alternate.
Well, Mr. Doc took himself off.
You know, the reality is that there's a 3-member hearing and we can't get 3 people. We could always reach out and add somebody. It's
Right.
not like these things are set in stone.
We just like to have a name to pull from. Okay, that looks set. For architectural, I,
Mr.
okay,
Mr. Arnold, sorry, would like to be added. And I would as well.
okay. Yeah. Anyone else?
This is Mr. Fulmer. I would volunteer.
So the names for architectural are Mr. Straight, Mr. Hamel, Mr. Arnold, Mr. Dial, and Mr. Fulmar.
You have to approve the,
You have to approve the four.
I'll make a motion that we approve the 4 new 3 panels that we just went over.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
On to item number C, the 2020 MEC repealing Act of AMC Chapter 23.20 to adopt local amendments to the National Electrical Code 2020 edition. I would entertain some discussion. Would anybody like to move to discuss?
I'll make the motion to discuss. It seems like Mr. Cowling might have some insight.
Do we need a second on the motion to discuss?
I second the motion.
Yes, Mr. Dial motion and Mr. Sobolewski second.
Okay. So, was it up to me to then introduce what we did?
You or Mr. Fogberg?
I'll go ahead. I was pretty involved with it. We worked with the municipality and the local other professionals, electricians, engineers, and we spent, I think, the better part of maybe 3-4 months, went through all of the original amendments that we had already had from previous codes, reviewed those to see if any of them could be eliminated or if any needed modified. And we also went through the changes of the 2020 NEC and made a few amendments to some of the new changes that were problematic for Alaska. And after we accomplished it, we had a couple other changes that came back through after proofreading, and it has now been thoroughly reviewed by the committee, and we put it forward for approval.
Through the chair. So it's off to legal at this point? Sorry, been through legal? Okay. So it's before the.
You guys, then it goes.
Oh, sorry. Through the chair, anything of any particular note, anything that unusual that came up this time around, or is it more or less business as usual? Through the
It
chair.
was
Go ahead.
good.
Through the chair, this is Victor Fosberg. So just keep in mind that 2020 was adopted by the state on April 16th last year. They did it without giving us the advance. We always try to parallel close to them. There are a number of things that nationally were a big change, but we do them already. So it's not going to be a drastic in a lot of things. There were some advancements. There were a number of things in ground fault protection that, as Eric already addressed, that we were trying to make sure we're not too far ahead or put too much stress on the industry in town, because there's not availability of certain 3-phase breakers, things like that. Specifically, when you deal with some of the service arrangements that the national code requires, we put in some exceptions in our local area because, again, there's not frames that comply with what the national standard are without actually having to build big monstrosities on 4-plexes and 6-plexes. So actually, probably more so than I can ever remember, this amendment actually helps in a lot of areas where if it was just a straight adoption of the national code, there'd be a lot more difficulties locally. How the specifically ground faults, breaker arrangements and services, a number of even things on the residential side where the requirement for putting fan rated boxes in every ceiling in every house. So wherever you put a ceiling box, you have to do that. We modified that back to what we thought the intent of what they were trying to do without making it onerous on the local electricians and contractors. There's a number of those little tweaks. The other one is probably biggest one is arc faults. Following some of the allowance in the national code to give a little more flexibility at the build time. Not being less than the state, but with modifying, giving them an option, not having to use arc faults in some very specific situations. So we did a lot of tweaking. And then on the commercial side, I would think probably what designers, Eric would probably be the better to mention that the code is very specific in a prescriptive manner in the commercial about where you have a meeting room and things you have to do. Since we required local design, that was really causing problems with doing floor boxes, existing structures, having to cut them up. And it wasn't really what everyone felt the intent of the code was. But since we have designers that are designing specifically the electrical for what they're doing, we were comfortable with modifying the language in order to make it match up with what locally would work better. Those are a few.
Any other discussion? Do I have a motion to approve as written?
I'll motion to approve the AO 2021. I'm sorry, the 2020 NEC.
I'll second.
Anyone opposed? Okay, on to old business. AO 2021-88, an omnibus ordinance amending AMC Title 23 to provide clarity for implementation of code and related matters. I will entertain a motion for discussion. I motion to open the floor for discussion.
Second.
Floor is open.
Through the chair. Last I heard about this one, I believe this was on its way, or Ross, weren't you working on something with the assembly with regards to this, or did they send this back to the building board?
No, it's, the reason this is on the agenda as old business was, I thought that an ordinance was going to be done correcting the issue. And I'd been working with the assembly attorney on the language and had sent him language, but he's been like super busy and hadn't got around to basically putting together an ordinance to fix the language from 2021 88S. So unfortunately, there's nothing to discuss tonight on this matter.
Other than it hasn't really.
Progress has been made. It's just, we need the assembly to close the loop on writing the ordinance. So that we have language that the board can then review.
Okay. That sounds like on to the next item. We don't have to vote or anything, right?
Well, through the chair, we do have a gentleman here that wanted to speak on behalf of that topic that we were not aware of, but was not going to be discussed. So maybe just hear him out, see what.
What's your name?
Ben Dunham, I'm a training instructor with 367 plumbers and steam fitters. I was just trying to find which
Like, they proposed it for item 3.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Regarding,
there's no up-to-date language in this packet to even go over. Everything in the packet is like way out of date and irrelevant.
But nothing's gonna be discussed on this tonight.
No,
As soon as a licensed plumber, and that I'm personally against anything pertaining to allowing people not licensed to work on what is covered under licensed work today. It's a big safety issue that can cause all kinds of hazards. Issues. I don't want to see that.
Through the chair, we agree. We've been attempting to address this, and Ross has done a lot of legwork as far as helping the assembly come up with some new language to address this particular aspect of this amendment or this ordinance, but
Ross, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have a local policy in place right now to address this until this is fixed, correct?
correct.
Okay. So as of right now, it's not enacted, it's revised right now.
And then it'll come back to the board and then go.
And just through the chair, there is, just for further information, if you want to look it up, it's AG 58. And that's actually what's being enforced right now. That the building official across the sign, so it clarifies how we're treating it right now.
It's just clarification of stock.
Because the way that what was adopted, this put, I think all of our opinions put us in line with what state law was, right?
and that was developed to keep all the contractors and did their lane as far as qualifications and things like that, so.
And just as a point of clarification through the chair, that the revised language that will come before the board eventually will be in accordance with state law. You know,
That's what you're, yeah, I mean, you're.
And we most certainly appreciate you taking the time. to come in.
Thank you.
Speaking on.
And thanks for hearing me.
Straight, yeah, thank you, man.
Any other comments before we move on?
To the chair, Don McCann. So we are going to revisit this again after it's rewritten. That's what I'm supposed to understand.
That's correct. Legal,
And that will be within the next meeting.
maybe.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so this will come from the assembly and the assembly attorney's working on the language. So obviously we have no control over that timeline, but they are nearly complete with it. So I have confidence that we are going to see it within a reasonable amount of time.
But then we'll be able to approve it or disapprove it, correct?
Well, we'll make a recommendation to the assembly is what we'll do, or is what the
And
board
then-
will.
Then it'll go back.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
We already did make a recommendation to them.
Yes, we did.
Anybody else? Okay, moving on to the third-party structural review, which I believe is AO 2022-100. I will entertain motion for discussion.
I will I will move to discuss the agenda item.
Last second. Okay, discussion is open. Mr. Strait, would you like to talk about this? I know that you sent an email to a couple of us that was working on the original draft letter to the assembly, and I thought you had a lot of good points, and I think that would be a great starting place. Like, to take a look, I don't know if you have access to that email.
Yeah, sure. First of all, mic check, can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
All right. Where things stand today, to start out with, this was before the assembly originally in early December, the same day as the whole Girdwood Holton Hills thing came up. So that pushed off the assembly agenda. It got delayed a while. And when it finally did come up, it was immediately dropped by the sponsors. They did not want to get a vote on it because the feeling at the time in that assembly meeting was it wasn't going to go anywhere. So as it stands now, it's been delayed for action by the assembly until I believe the February 21st assembly meeting. So first, quick question for staff. Have we heard anything from the assembly, from Assemblyman Cross or anybody else on this? Have they come to us for guidance or to discuss?
Through the chair, this is Ross. No, we have not heard anything from Cross or the sponsors of the ordinance. Anybody who stayed up till 11 o'clock that night, the assembly basically, rather than, they didn't like vote it down, they remanded it back to the building board, which is kind of some really not real clear language, I guess you could say. And the way I'd understand that would be, okay, now it's up to the authors of the ordinance to then go take this ordinance either back to the Structural Engineers of Alaska, the building board, or both. If they were so inclined to want to revise language, you know, to obtain a document that the assembly would approve. And as I said, and we have not received any sort of notification or communication from the authors of the ordinance.
Mr. Straight, has SEAC, we have given the assembly authors the letter that I think I saw a copy of. Is that correct?
Yes, the Structural Engineers Association of Alaska, SEAC, submitted a letter before the assembly meeting, more or less echoing our sentiments where they did not approve, they did not agree with the ordinance as written. That was submitted to the assembly, and I'd shared that with a few of our folks who were talking about it. But beyond that, to my knowledge, there has been no discussion on that front either, as far as Assembly Member Cross reaching out to the Structural Engineers Association. So where we go from here, I'm not sure. I'm happy to discuss it and come up with ideas of how we can improve it. However, I'm not sure who we're truly talking to on this.
Well, let's also go back for a second. So we wrote a letter, we helped draft a letter to the authors of that stating that we have reservations about it. We'd like them to talk to not only the structural engineers, but the contracting and try to have a dialogue with the board as well. And then that just kind of got disregarded in the work session, or at least from what I could see, and went right into it. They said that the reason for the ordinance was that they had a concern about housing. They wanted to speed up the process for getting housing built, but obviously we all know that this affects multiple occupancies, including critical use facilities. I think this Sterling is stating like hospitals, fire stations, so on and so forth. I don't know if it makes sense to write another letter that's probably a little bit more detailed. I think we tried to quickly get something out just to let them know that we were against it, but we didn't get into the details of it. The SEAC letter that I have seen that has been transmitted to them, I think it pretty much encapsulated all of our concerns that they had, and actually a couple of other things that I can't remember off the top of my head, but I just remember at the time when I read it that I thought they did a good job voicing their concerns, and I think we echo them. So I don't know if we need to write an additional letter for this, but I think it's still in their court from our first letter saying that, hey, we're here to talk. So I don't know what there is to do. Does anybody else have any comment on that?
Chair. I was thinking, it does sound like it's in the ball's in their court right now. If they're not following up with it, I'm not quite sure what there is, what we could do, right? Aside from attempt to get legislation passed ourselves. So, which I'm not suggesting.
Through the chair, just as a point of clarification, or I guess from my own understanding, maybe for everyone on the board, was the effect of the assembly referring it back to the building board being that if they bring something again to the assembly, that then it would come back to the building board first to be looked at and then go to the assembly? Is that the effect of the referral? Which leads on to what you were saying. There's nothing to do until they submit something to the assembly. It gets referred back to the building board to comment on it or to do work session committee to understand it. So really, they've just set up a process that will come back to you as the building board.
I'm not sure. Sterling, you'll have to speak to that because at the assembly meeting that you attended, did they say that they were going to be just reaching out to other people, or did you just say it's just kind of, they're just delaying the vote on it?
It was officially delayed to a later assembly meeting, and I've got February 21st in my notes. So if I understand it right, it's on the agenda for that assembly meeting, under the assumption that they would have worked with us and SEAC and other stakeholders to get alignment on it prior to that meeting. I assume if it comes up at that meeting and there's no alignment, it will not go anywhere beyond that. At least I would hope so, that that doesn't get passed without that alignment.
That's an interesting predicament. Again, I'm not quite sure what else we did. We've already reached out to them to let them know that we're willing to work with them on correcting the language of the ordinance. They already know that they've got SEAC's letter as well. So I guess if they get it passed without, two entities being on board, if that's possible. I don't know if there's anything else we can do to sway them to work with us.
At this point, I would propose that we defer further discussion, because as much as we love talking about this, if it's not going anywhere, I think our time may be spent on other things in a better way.
Certainly, I appreciate you attending that meeting, by the way.
Mhm.
Any other comments before we move on to reports? On to reports.
We have still a motion on the floor.
Oh,
It's open for discussion, so we need to close it.
So do I just say we go ahead and go for it? We have to vote.
I'll make a motion to close the agenda item 5B.
And this is Shirley, and I'll second.
Anybody opposed? Okay, motion for the motion is closed. Or agenda item is closed. Now we're moving on to reports. Take it away, Rob. Staff. Staff.
Yeah, so it's January in Alaska. Things are pretty slow still. We're kind of just trickling in at this point. I had I had 5 structural plan reviewers. One of them resigned in December, so now I'm down to 4. Given the pace of work right now, we're not going to refill that position. I have another structural plan reviewer that's going to retire February 24. I am going to try to refill that position. We'll see how that shakes out in this hiring environment. And one big project on the horizon that it looks pretty confident is going to be coming at us this year is the Block 41 development, which is the 4th Avenue Theater development. And it's basically going to consist of a parking structure that's about the size of a city block that's going to serve the KeyBank building that's being renovated. Looks pretty cool, the way they renovated that thing with the big sloped exterior wall. And then the parking structure is going to be like 4 stories and have about 450 parking spaces in it. And there's going to be 2 towers on top of it. And I think one tower is going to be a hotel and one tower is going to be condos. So yeah, if that project kicks off this year, that'll be a pretty significant project going on in Anchorage. Yeah, anything else anybody has to offer?
Through the chair, are there any other staff positions that are vacant right now that you guys are looking to fill?
We are going to fill, we did have a plumbing inspector retire. We are going to fill that position along with they're making a leave for the code abatement team. Our code abatement team will now have a foreman, so to speak. Positions were
Vacant.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, yeah, so we still got a couple vacant positions at the permit counter. I have an on-site water and wastewater inspector position that I'm trying to fill. That's good. Looks like that's gonna be a bit challenging.
Mr. Straight?
Thank you. Through the chair, who is the building official right now, the official building official? Are you still filling that role, Ross, or has that been dealt with elsewhere?
Yeah, I'm still acting as the acting building official.
Well, you're doing a good job acting. Thank you.
How official is that? I mean, that'd be a good question. I don't know. No, things are running pretty smoothly right now. You know, there's not a ton of work out there. I'm sure you guys are seeing that too, at least not in Anchorage. And there might be more stuff going on outside of Anchorage.
Okay, do I need to close anything or can I move on to the next item? Yeah, okay, great. Gonna move on to board member comments. Do I need to open the floor for discussion? No, they can just speak freely. Great. Anyone? No, no. Like we're moving on to adjournment. Do I have a motion for adjournment? Motion to adjourn. I'll second. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thanks, everyone.
Have a good night.
Good night.
This is